everybody, it's Andy from Snow Camps Europe. I'm here with Paul from the Ski Instructor Academy here in Kaprun, and another podcast, which you will probably be watching on New Year's Day, so Happy New Year.
Yeah, Christmas is done. Yes.
Over. I tell you what, guess what I got for Christmas?
Socks.
Pair of heated socks.
Pair of heated socks. A pair of heated gloves would have been good. I've already got the heated socks, but there's no need to use them now because it's bloody plus 12 out there.
Yeah, it's very warm today. We were skiing in the rain this morning, which was refreshing. But they're not ski socks, they're just heated socks rather than heated ski socks. But at least I get to work out if they work before I buy heated ski socks. So yeah, more socks. I do like socks, I keep saying. But yeah, Christmas, it's over, it's done.
For another year.
Resort's not that busy, as to be expected, because of what's going on. But we're not going to talk about that today. I don't think it's that busy. No, not that busy. It's a little bit busier than it was last week, and the ski schools have filled up, but it's not that busy.
But in fairness, Andy, you have got a job.
I am working, yeah.
You've got a new job.
Yeah. My first week of the season wasn't that good. I only got 2 days work. One was a snow camps day, and then one was because another ski teacher didn't turn up for his lesson. And then obviously...
You abandoned ship.
Yeah, since this week, back with the SIA and my retake group.
Yes.
But yeah,
we'll talk about them later. But you had a topic of conversation because I enjoyed all the comments from the skiing and low vis.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting to hear people's opinions and how they tackle such difficult conditions. So you thought you'd bring up another one.
Yeah, and it was because on my day over in Zell last week, it had been very warm the previous day. That night it had got very, very cold, and therefore the piste had been pisted and it had frozen in corduroy. And the very first thing that the lady said to me was, how do you ski on ice? So we thought we would talk about skiing on hard, packed snow and ice. And I think it's important that people understand that ice and hard, frozen snow are different.
Yeah, because, I mean, the things that the racers ski on, if you've ever been on a proper fist race course, that's ice.
Yeah. That's injected blue see-through ice.
And that's what makes it so phenomenal what they do, because, when we say it's icy, they would laugh and go, it's nicey. They want this really hard blue ice, real aggressive feel under the ski. But we are talking about more freeze-thaw action and what we consider as being icy. And even, I suppose as well, Andy, you could say there was icy patches, how you get them really icy patches at the end of the day and stuff, exactly. Or brushed off bits.
Yeah, the brushed off stuff, especially up on the glacier. We find that where people have all turned, then it will get through to what's a lot harder underneath and icy. And I think that was really this lady's question, was how do I deal with that when I'm skiing along and then all of a sudden, I feel myself going.
Yeah.
And I've got ideas of how to deal with it.
Throw them out there.
The first one, to be honest, is just go with it. Just let your skis slide, and then you're eventually going to come off that ice and you're going to hit some softer snow and you'll get grip again. So one of the things is, how do you deal with that situation? Just let it happen. Just slide. As long as you're not sliding and landing on your backside. Just let your skis go over it, because you're not going to stay on it forever, and you are going to hit softer snow.
Yeah, I think the important point to point out there is what tends to happen when somebody hits ice is they naturally push. And as they tighten, stiffen and push, basically the ski, as you say, will slide, and that pushing action pushes the base of support further away from the centre of mass. So it's fine to say if you're going to slide with it, just make sure that that's what you're doing. You are sliding with it, with your whole mass. Because if you leave your mass uphill and your skis are sliding downhill, then that's going to be a scissor action, and it's going to be very quickly onto the inside, and you're going to fall inside. So yeah, you can just, like you say, be more aware as you go across the hill about the conditions and say, yeah, at that point there, it's likely, rather than getting, a clean turn across the hill, I'm going to be moving across the hill and down the hill at the same time, in essence.
And that goes back to what we said about side slipping again, because it's, in essence, to stay on top of them skis and slip over the ice, it's a side slip.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you practice in side slipping a lot, you'll practice what it's like when your centre of mass is not accurately aligned to the forces coming up over. And then you'll get used to knowing where to place your centre of mass over the skis at a certain angle, slope, etc. But yeah, slide with it, and as long as I stress, you don't literally let your skis slide downhill while you stay uphill, you're fine. You can move with it and get a sensation of both going in two directions, if you like, going across the hill and sliding down the hill at the same time, which is a bit of a skill. Why not? What else you got, Andy?
Well, so if we're talking about the frozen snow, so it's been pisted and it was wet and then it's frozen and it's these little tiny Toblerone shapes, then if you know it's icy, then firstly think about what is it I need to do. And the first thing I would say is, firstly, be confident. Don't take baggage onto that run. Don't think you're already going to fail. Be a bit more positive and think, okay, I know it's icy, therefore I'm going to need to ski it slightly differently than if it was soft. And I always say to people, just you need to commit. If you don't commit, then there's more chance you're going to slip or lose it. And when I say commit, I mean commit to using your edges. Get your weight on the downhill ski. It doesn't have to look pretty. And also make sure that your movements are all being used at the right time.
Yeah.
And another thing that I came across the other day, so it was in someone's comment, and they said, what do you do when you start walking on ice? And I tell you, this morning I came out the front door at 6 o'clock to take the dogs to the toilet, and whoa, was it icy, because it kind of rain snowed last night, and then it froze and it was like glass. And after I'd realised it was icy, I had to walk in a pair of Crocs, which was not the right footwear to have on, to the bin to put the poo in the bin and walk back. And what do you do when you walk on ice? You walk carefully.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you centre yourself. You certainly don't put your foot out in front of you in heel strike, because you know fine well that you're going to end up on your backside if you put your foot too far forward. Yeah, I mean, if we come back to that idea of why is it that the skis don't, or you don't react the same way on hard-packed snow, well, it's to do with the centre of pressure. And what this means is if the ski on grippy snow, what the ski does is it allows it to sink in a bit more. And because it's sinking in, if you think of an ice skater on ice, the blade of the ice skate is right in the centre of the foot. And therefore, that's how they can skate on blue ice, because there's no movement arm associated with an ice skate's boot, if you like. There's nothing pulling it down the other direction. Your weight is right over the centre of that blade. Whereas when you edge a ski, and this is why it gets very difficult in ice, if you're on a twin tip or a fat boy or something like that, you have a large movement arm that's trying to flatten the ski. And because the ski can't sink in as much as normal, this movement arm's increased. There's a bigger force now levering it back down. And therefore, having a narrow ski on ice, for example, a more aggressive race style ski with a narrow waist, is a big advantage on hard-packed snow. And it's one of the reasons why we encourage all our students to not buy twin tips, fat boys, anything like that to do our courses on, because we're aware conditions change all through the season. And we want them to, primarily anyway, to progress in a ski instructor course. You want people on, race-style dynamic skis. But also because if they're going to be skiing some steeps in some difficult icy conditions, the last thing you want is some floppy rockers, that
flapping around.
Flapping about. So this centre of pressure, this movement arm, the way your ski sinks in, it doesn't happen on ice in the same way. The analogy I can give you from my side is, if you think of a tomato, a soft tomato, and you had a relatively bluntish knife and you just press down to cut the tomato just goes and just bursts open. We all know with a tomato, you've got to sort of like draw the blade across the skin of the tomato to slice through. We've all done it in the restaurant when you've had a steak and something, they've put a little cooked tomato on. And you went to stab your fork and it goes over your white shirt. Well, that's the thing. To stop that happening, you want to break the skin. You want to draw the knife across. Now, on skiing on ice, sometimes I think people think they they have to be extra aggressive, like extra hard push. And if you do that, you probably, unless you're like one of those racers, really accurate, you probably end up getting that jadder underneath your ski, that effect of that vibration, and you feel it chattering away. And the reason it's doing that is it's gripping, then breaking the ice, gripping, then breaking, and it keeps slipping slightly downhill because you've used this huge macro movement and you've pushed hard on the ski at the top of the turn, or like as you go around the apex, instead of actually micro management with your edging first to feel the lip. And then at that point, when you feel there is a bite, there's a lip, at that point, then you can start your angulation and you can start to balance on that tiny lip of ice effectively. So think of it as a tomato and you're halfway there. What else you got, Andy?
I'm just trying to process a tomato.
So you're just trying to...
Wow.
2 feet. You've got 2 feet, yeah? So on ice, I mean, we constantly harper on about the inside ski. I know, sorry, I should say the other way around. We harper on about the outside, but in Ski Instructor Academy, we talk a lot about the inside ski because it's missed out a lot. You know, it's really easy to say outside ski, balance on your outside ski, you're not on your outside. I hear this all the time. It's one of the bad cues I'd like to talk about on one of these podcasts. But we do use our inside ski a lot in general skiing. However, on ice, Jesus, you know, you've got 2 feet. At this point here, if you're not a confident skier, just being on one ski on ice, surely it makes sense to have 2 skis. Mm-hmm. You might as well use that second ski. Obviously, we don't want you falling in on it. We don't want you putting all your weight on it. But at the same time, having 2 skis, use 2 feet on ice. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I suppose if we're saying you use 2 feet and use both skis, then you don't want too narrow a stance either, because you want to be able to use the skis independently, and a wider stance, wider base of support as well. Over the
yeah, as long as that wider base of support is functional. That's what I always say. If we're talking about 2 skis, now let's talk about the length of the ski. Don't get caught too far forward on ice, especially at the back end of the turn. And this is, before we were on air, I'd said to Andy I'd like to revisit something that Tom Gelly and I did on Fore and Aft. And it's because I was tackling it yesterday in a lecture, and I realised how little knowledge people have about fore and aft. And if you get the chance, look at this video that I've attached here, because it's really interesting about where we should be standing on the ski length, because it is a ski length and it has different radiuses built into it. And there are purposes why you want to be on the front, the middle, or the back of the ski. But on ice, again, I would say, where possible, if you've got a 1 meter 80 centimeter ski, don't just use 80 centimetres of it. Mm-hmm. You know, use the full length and use both feet on the full length of the ski. And that's going to provide you with extra grip. It all sounds base of support, you know, it's all about that.
Yeah. So we're talking about going from toe to heel, are we?
Yeah, and this is something which I think we'll pick it up on another podcast when we deal with the fore and aft, because it's such a complex situation to discuss verbally as well without putting on some example skiers. But definitely one thing that's going to happen is if you, and every skier we have on our course, whether we have 200 or 100, it doesn't make any difference, they all do the same mistake, and that is they come past the fall line and they get confidence and they start to ram forward on the shin of the boot at that point in the turn, when actually a very proficient skier is doing the opposite. They're centering and moving to the tail a bit, actually. Now, if you go to the front, it would be like overloading the front of a car when you're going around a hairpin bend. The back end's going to spin out. So think of the back end of the ski has tremendous amount of power and grip if you're using it. Yeah. But if you now hanging off the balls of your feet, then basically you've just disengaged it and it'll wash out. Yeah. And this is where a lot of the times that chronic stem comes from. The chronic stemming because that ski, downhill ski, is braking and it's oversteering at that end of the turn. Yeah. But on ice, that would be fatal because that's going to really rotate you as well. It's going to create a rotation in the hip, and that's also going to make things matter and end up with a situation where you are too far inside at that point of the turn. So trying to, even if you're not very good with fore and aft yet, you don't quite understand it, my tip would be, in this case, let's center ourselves throughout the turn now. So at least you're using the length of the ski, and that would make a difference. We have to obviously then, because we did tackle the importance of having the right ski, it has to also be mentioned, you are pretty screwed if you haven't got that right edge. service.
I was just coming on to that obviously a well-serviced ski is going to be better. And if you know that, like the other day in Zell, that it's been very warm, the snow has started to melt and then it's frozen overnight, take your skis in and get them serviced if you know it's going to be icy. And now, I'd say that I'm probably one of the world's worst for not getting his skis serviced. I probably get them serviced twice a season.
That's just because you're tight, Andy.
Yeah, possibly. But yeah, so it's the right edge angle, isn't it? Because a lot of people think it's just we take them in and we get them edged, and that would typically be at 90 degrees. But there are different edge angles, and there is also the base bevel, which would help as well.
Yeah, so we've all had in our time, because we've skied a lot, bad services. And, you know, I've mentioned it before in the podcast where I've had to almost walk down the hill because the ski's been that badly serviced. It makes a difference. And a lot of you wouldn't know that. You know, you would just give it to somebody, trust them, they put it through whatever machine, or somebody's doing it by hand, for example. It makes a difference. If the ski is let's say 87.7 bevel or something, really, really race orientated, for an average ski, that's not going to be beneficial at all. It's going to be very snaggy, it's going to be grabby, especially if it's not detuned at the tip and tail.
The tail for sure is going to hook
and
up.
If all these words I'm saying don't make sense to you, then basically you want to get into a shop where you can have some confidence that they've got a quality machine and things. So you look at ski shops, I always wonder why people go into some of these shops when I've been in France, Switzerland, whatever, and you look at them, they're like little corner shops, like they look a bit, they don't look much. And you think, why are they going to that one? Well, maybe they're getting a hand service. There's a very good guy there. Or alternatively, I would look at it like, you look at Brundle's flagship store here. That machine's going to be hundreds of thousands of euros. It's going to be hitting out perfect stuff every time if you want a cheaper machine style service. You need to learn a little bit about it, but you want to have confidence that it is done correctly, because if a service is done incorrectly, it is an absolute nightmare. But yeah, having a ski that has burrs all over it on ice, it's going to seriously make it a much more challenging day for you. If you are the type that brings your skis, after them being packed away for a year, you come and ski and they weren't serviced after the last time, then I would strongly suggest as soon as you arrive into town, get a service. Because why are you paying €1,000 holiday and then not bothering spending €25 on a service? Yeah,
I've actually got a sheet of edge angles, which I'll put in the comments below the video, because it talks about what the ideal is for a slalom ski, a giant slalom ski, if you are a freestyler, how you want your edges to be set up. Because, a freestyler's not going to have freestyler, someone on twin tips, they're not going to have much joy on ice, but equally they don't want sharp edges when going on a rail. Kind of the opposite kind of thing. They don't want it to grip. So I'll put that in the description, because it gives you about 7 or 8 different things. But I think it's important to say the average rental ski is going to have a 90-degree angle on it.
Does it have a 90? I don't know. I'd have to ask.
I think so, and I think the reason I was told is a 90-degree angle is the hardest wearing angle.
It's the hardest wearing angle.
It takes longer to wear out. Yeah, where if something else would wear out, and they would therefore have to service it. And then the other thing was. What was I going to say about rental skis? Is obviously the rental skis, they will put them through the machines pretty much after every rental, if it's a good rental shop. Yeah. So you should have fresh edges every week. If you haven't got fresh edges, then don't worry about going back to that rental shop and saying, can I please have my edges sharpened? Because they'll do it for you there and then. But yeah.
So we tackled quite a few things. We've tackled the importance of the ski, whatever ski you're using. Be aware that if you've got a floppy, soft, wide underfoot, all mountain ski, it is going to be more challenging than if you've got a nice, race style ski, a race carb ski. Having a longer ski is going to be helpful on the ice. So that's why you see a lot of the Austrians ski trainers, we tend to ski with giant slalom skis, because twofold. One, there's not much shape to it. So as opposed to a slalom ski, it's very shaped, it's parabolic. the tip and tail are much wider than the waist, whereas on a giant slalom ski, it's almost like the old style, just straight skis. But a straight style ski without much shape, it turns much nicer. It can slide much nicer. So when we are doing things like plough parallel and you're teaching instructors, having a giant slalom ski for the basic style turns is much better than having a slalom ski, because a slalom ski is quite grabby, it's snaggy at times, and on ice, not all the length of the ski will be engaged in the same way as a giant slalom ski. So a longer ski is actually an advantage, and I know there are disadvantages to longer skis, obviously, as well. So narrower underfoot, definitely. We want to be two-footed a bit. We want to be able to use both uphill edges at times. We want to use the length of that longer skis. We want to think of the tomato analogy, which Andy's still thinking about now.
The next time I'm out to dinner, I'm going to tell them about the tomato analogy.
He's going to draw his knife across the tomato. In micromanage rather than just push. Yeah. This pushing on ice will cause that. And I would then add the final one that I can think of that might help people is do the opposite of what you think you should do. And that is, as you go around the turn, have a sort of compression, an eccentric action as opposed to a concentric push. So don't actually, if you feel the ski vibrating, soften. Do not try harder and harder to get an edge, but actually do the opposite. Actually fold your feet up towards you a bit and soften instead. So it's all the opposite, because the brain wants to push. It wants to be aggressive, obviously. It wants to try and get grip. But do the opposite. That would be what I would say. Cool. I think I tackled it. I think that was it. What do you reckon?
There's enough there, I think. There's enough there. If you can't ski ice after that, just come and have a lesson. Bye for now.
Bye for now.